Hello everyone, my name is Bindya and today we'll be doing two kinds of seams. One is called a French seam and the other one is flat felt seam. So in the beginning, what you need to do is you can take, I've already cut two pieces of fabric, put them together, and this is what we are going to make the French seam. Now French seam, you can basically just draw a line with your ruler. Okay, so this is a ruler. You can draw a line going half an inch. It depends on how much seam allowance you have put. You can either draw a line half an inch or you can use on your machine, you have various lines, you can use that. Okay, so what I would recommend, like this half an inch seam allowance is done for if you're going to make a big garment. But right now you're just going to make a small sample for practice sake. So we are just going to go a 1/4 inch sewing. And what is exactly a 1/4 inch sewing? It's when you put the center of the needle and the edge of the presser foot is your 1/4 inch distance. So I'm not going to sew half an inch because it's a small piece of fabric. So what I'm just going to do, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch. Now, the main reason that whenever you're doing a French seam, the right side, this is my wrong side, okay? The fabric, because it's a solid color, that's why you can't make out a wrong side and the right side. But I'm just going to put my cross, so I'll know that this is my wrong side of the fabric. So when you do a French seam, it's not like a regular seam, because in a regular seam, you put your right side of the fabric towards your right side of the other side. And now what exactly is the right side of the fabric? When I have a printed fabric like this is my right side and this is my wrong side, okay, where there's a faded print. Now, when I have a solid color, it's very difficult to find out the right side and wrong side, but still there's a difference, okay, of a right side, wrong side. But if in case you get confused, what you can do is just put a cross for your wrong side on both the sides. And for this one, we will be sewing not right side facing right, but wrong side facing wrong for French seam. It's not like the regular seam, it's the other kind of a seam. So what you're going to sew is your wrong side facing wrong. So now what I put them together, you hold the piece and then you sew, just like how I said, you do your 1/4 inch sewing. Because this is a small piece, it's a sample. So that's why I'm going a little bit narrower in my seam. So you can start off either with a back stitch, and now this is just, we are trying to practice, so we can just go without any doing any back stitch. So I'm going to start sewing. So you just match your edge of the presser foot with the edge of your fabric. So you're holding two of them together like this and just go. If in case you are a little bit uncomfortable, you can always pin up and do your sewing. So once you have finished doing your sewing, you can take it out. Okay, so this is my 1/4 inch sewing happening. So now, just like how I told you that you have done your wrong side facing wrong. Okay, wrong side facing wrong. So what you need to do is just flatten your seam. You can iron it also. I'm just doing it with my nails. You can iron it so that the seam flattens up nicely. You first do it from the wrong side, and then you can come in like this, and then you can iron it like that. Okay, you don't have to flatten it. Like generally when we do a flat seam, a single like seam like that, we generally iron it and flatten the seam. But the open seam, it's a French seam, so we are going to close it. So just leave it like that. And now what we are going to do, we are going to sew it from the wrong side. Okay, so once you iron it like that, you can again iron it, keeping this area flat, okay, so that your seam is at the edge. So iron it over here nicely. Just to save time, I'm just going to do it with my nails, but this is done, okay. Now I'm going to sew. You know that you had taken a 1/4 inch sewing. So if in case you just want to do a 1/4 inch sewing, you can always trim off this extra. And the reason why you'll be trimming off this extra, I'm going to let you know later on, once we finish the sewing, okay? So you can just trim off. Okay, you can trim off like I'm just doing it in the camera. So you can trim it off closer to your seam, okay? That is if you are just planning to go very, very thin seam. And I'll tell you also the reason why we do the French seam later on. Okay, so I've trimmed it. The reason, again, I'm going to show it after my sewing that why did I trim it. Okay, so now I have my edge going like that. I'm just going to flatten it. Now I'm going back on my machine. And now I can do my back stitch because this is actually my final stitching for French seam. I'm going to use my guideline, the side of my presser foot and the edge of my seam. It's a seam because I've already sewn. So now I'm going to do my back stitch. So 2-3 times your back stitch and then you can start. Now you see the cross over here. So it shows this is my wrong side. Okay, that cross was my wrong side of the fabric. And when I'm finishing, I can do my back stitch, just locking up my seam. Now my French seam is done. You see the cross, that's my wrong side. And now actually this is my right side. Okay, this is my right side. So this gets flattened. Okay, so you can see the seam and this is my wrong side. The cross shows it and this is like that. And the reason why we do a French seam is basically when you have transparent fabrics, that's like chiffons, georgette, you know, flimsy kind where you can see the sewing. So generally what happens when you have a seam and the threads start fraying, you know how you have a fabric, you've seen in the fabric, it starts fraying. When you pull from here, you start getting threads coming out. Okay, see, when I'm pulling from here, see how the threads come out. So when you have a transparent kind of a fabric, what happens, even though you do serging on it, all my other participants, the older classes ones would know what serging is. So what happens, even with the serging, if anything is transparent, you get to see the sewing over there. Okay, so this is the reason why we do a French seam. So French seam basically finishes the raw edge. Okay, it finishes the raw edge inside, and moreover, it makes it sturdier also. So even if you pull it, it's been sewn twice. So this is the reason why we do French seam. Okay, so now French seam is done. The next one we are going to do is flat fell seam. Flat fell seam means it's sewn flat and then it falls. Like that's the name it has got. So I'm going to do a demo for that. Okay. So in that also the same, I've just cut 2 pieces of fabric, okay? And in this, you have a choice. Either you can do wrong side facing wrong side, or you can do right side facing right. But what I'm going to do right side facing right, and then we are going to do flat fell seam. And I'm going to show also where it's basically used. I have just brought in a shirt, and in jeans also, they do the same thing, okay? So now this is my wrong side. I've already put cross for you people. So now I'm going to sew right side facing right. So this is my right side facing right, and I'm going to sew. And in this one, flat fell seam neck needs some extra fabric to be folded in. So we are going to sew 5/8. Now what is 5/8 of an inch? Okay, this is a measuring tape. Okay, so in this tape you have inches has got 8 lines. So when you start counting, I'm just showing it because this is brighter, the measuring tape. So you count, there are 8 lines in between 70 to 71 inches, like, okay. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 5/8 is what we will be sewing. So that it will be that much broad. And where do I have 5/8 over here? You can check it at your, this is the center of your needle. So you can check from, see where how I did that. You can check from the center and where exactly is my 5/8. Okay, so 5/8, it's showing on my sewing machine, the number is written. But suppose the number is not written and you people have got just the lines, you can check where exactly it's your 5/8. I do have 5/8. Later on, I'll show it when I'll move the camera. When I'll be doing DIY class with you people, then I'll show I do have 5/8 written. So I'm going to use that as my guideline. So it's no more edge of the presser foot. So I'm going to follow up my 5/8 line. And in this also, I'm going to start off right from the beginning. I don't need to do the back stitch because I still have to do one more seam. I'll do my back stitch at that time. When you have these guidelines, it becomes so easy. Like you don't have to draw a line, you know, see how I showed you that you draw a line with a ruler and a chalk. It's not needed when you understand what those guidelines are on your machines. So now I've finished sewing my 5/8 of an inch. 5/8 of an inch is more than half an inch. Okay, so it'll see how big, broader it's looking. So once I have done that, so now what exactly is flat fell seam? This is again something similar to your French seam. The raw edges get hidden. But in this one, we are doing making it flat. Like suppose you have 2 bed sheets, you want to join them. So most of the time it's joining 2 pieces of fabric and you want to hide the raw edge and you want the seam to stay flat because French seam stays raised up. It stays raised up. So this one you want to go flat and it stays good, you know, whether you want to put it on any your bedspread or you want to make your dining table piece and you have to join 2 pieces, we use that in that one. And mainly in the market, it's used for formal shirts. I'm going to show it to you once I finish off. And sometimes it's used in jeans also. Okay, some jeans, they have flat fell seam or they'll have a serged one. It depends which brand it is. So for this one now, I've already done this. So you will be using one side as it is, as 5/8 only, and the other side we'll be trimming off. So see, my seam is like that. Again, I'm going to, it's a good idea, always iron for these kind of things. So I'm just flattening it with my nails. And I'm flattening this seam also. So now this is done. So what I want to do is, I'm going to leave one of the seam, just 5/8, but the other one, I'm going to cut it into half. Okay, so half will be basically, I'll be trimming off like a 1/4 inch. So the 1/4 inch, I'm going to show it. So it can be between 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so I'll just move the camera a little bit so you can see. So it needs to be a little less than a 1/4 inch, but don't go too close to your seam because then wear and tear happens. Okay, so you're just trimming one side. Okay, so once this strip from one side is cut off, so next is this, the one that is already 5/8. I'm just going to fold it. Okay, so we are doubling it. So doubling means you are bringing in this. So don't do it like that. We are going to fold it inwards like that. Okay, towards the 5/8 side. and we are going to fold it. I always like using my nails. It makes it it flattens it nicely. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do it first with my fingernails throughout. So I'm basically matching the edge of my 5/8 to the sewing line. That sorts of makes it double my fold. So it's like your guideline. So once I have flattened it, you can now just put it down. Okay, so now we are touching it to the other side of the fabric, and we'll be pinning it up so that it stays good. So that's why it's called flat. Flat will be after sewing it, and fell. That's why the name fell comes. It falls after the sewing is done, okay? So then I'm just pinning it up over here. Using pins is always a good idea because it saves you the time. But just remember, while you're sewing, keep on removing them before you reach almost to the point. So see, this is my wrong side of the fabric. So I will be sewing this one on the wrong side at the edge. And my one single stitch will be coming on the right side of the fabric. So I'm taking my one pin out because I have to start sewing. You can iron also, that's totally your own choice. And now, because now this is my final sewing, I'm going to do a back stitch. If in case you want the stitch to go a little bit narrower in length, you can do that also. It's how you want the stitch to look from the right side. So my sewing is happening exactly at the edge. I'm closing it again with a back stitch. And my flat fell seam is done. Okay, so that's the edge. So this was my original line for the seam, and this is now my edge sewing. So if you go on the actual right side, so you get a line like that. Okay, so this is your seam, and this is the contrast thread. Okay, so in jeans, you know how you've seen they use a contrast thread. So that's what basically I have used. Okay, so this becomes a flat fell seam. Okay, you go like this, and you can see double line on the wrong side and this one. And where exactly it is used, just like how I discussed with you, I have this formal shirt, okay? And I'll just show it in my second camera, that where exactly this is used, okay? So see, they have used it on the sleeves bottom because these double sewing makes it much more sturdier. So the tear, even when it rubs it, it makes it go stronger. Same way, even if in jeans, you'll see it's in the inside leg, these double sewing, the flat fell seam. It's not on the outer side because it helps, it's a wear and tear of your garment. So when you see they have two lines. Now they have done the other way, okay? So just like how I told you, you can do it either this way or you can do it just with a single line showing. So both ways, it's the same thing. And this is just, they have it exactly at the sleeve spot, okay? And even it's going on the side seam also. That's where even the flat fell seam for garments are used.